What is going on, everybody? My name is Conor Lawler. Welcome back to another week of Hero or Zero here on the Heroes for Hire podcast. We are back again talking one comic book character. As we do every single week, we talk their good points and their bad points, so we generally just give you a bit of a rundown of everything to do with that character. I am joined as always by my best pal, Mr. Shaun. Shaun, how's it going?
I'm good, Conor. How are you?
It's Friday. It's weird Friday. You asked that question straight back to me. I wasn't ready.
Usually I don't engage with you at all. I do a weird bit.
Incredibly mundane problem that you have to tell us about.
I know I'm doing all right today, honestly.
I feel like I'm actually more worried, and me and the listeners have been talking. We're more worried when you have no problems.
No, do you know what I did? On my lunch break, I made a little invitation for my birthday party, Conor. And I'll send that to you right now.
Yeah, okay.
I've already told you about it, but like...
Yeah, but I want the little invitation. Otherwise, how can I RSVP?
Do you know what? I didn't consider that. Hang on, here's your WhatsApp. And I'm going to send that on there now.
Wait, is it by WhatsApp?
Yeah.
Sure, what's the fucking...
It's a JPEG.
No, you might as well make a little card.
Look at it though. I'm not killing trees when I don't have to.
That is true. Hang on, okay, I've got a message. This is, by the way, 0-0, Shaun. What's the kind of concept here?
Oh, it's where we take one comic book character every single week. We run through their good. I normally take Marvel characters. Conor normally takes DC characters. But either way, we just give people a little bit of a rundown on everything to do with that character. So, all right, did I do good?
It's a pool birthday party.
It's a pool party, but we're playing pool.
You know I love pool.
I know. It's a really good table as well.
Oh, I'm training. For weeks.
I'm going to have 18 pints and be terrible at pool.
This is related to 8-Ball, the comic book character from Marvel that we covered, whose superpower is just he plays pool
just
quite
lethal
well.
At pool. Yeah. Jeff Hagees.
He doesn't win all the time. He just kind of wins sometimes.
He's like me, pretty good at pool against the right people.
Like he's a high level against a mediocre opponent.
High level amateur, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So Shaun, it is my week for Hero Zero. If this is your first episode, you don't have to do anything. Don't worry about it. If it's your second and above, we would really appreciate a 5 stars on Spotify or on iTunes. Maybe a like. A review would be absolutely legendary if you really want to do that. But yeah, we just kind of talk comic book characters, and so it is my week. I am going to be talking a DC character, and I'm going to be talking a character that I think is it's a character that I don't think a lot of people know about, which is weird because this character was destined, well, maybe not destined, but set up to be the third Robin before Tim Drake became Robin.
Whoa, what? Did Tim...
Yes.
Wait, sorry, they were like seeding this idea and then just Tim took it over.
So the character I'm going to be covering is known as Anarky, Lonnie Matchin. Created by Alan Grant, and first appearance in November of 1989. Now, Anarky is like exceptionally popular character in the early 90s, right? Like, was massive. Came in, he had his own individual run later in the 90s with Alan Grant writing it. Was brought in as a bat character. He was going to be a major force, and then he kind of just, when Alan Grant stopped writing him, it just
no one else wanted to take him over.
Well, it was written. I'll get into a little bit more, but a lot of people tried, but every time it was tried by somebody else, it got more diluted as an idea and became worse. So, he was the creation of Alan Grant. He deliberately injected the character with like a bit of an anarchist philosophy. He's presented as both a villain and an anti-hero, and he basically pits the character against Batman to test his ideological underpinnings. So it's actually, the more you learn about it, the more I think of Anarky is like he's like an early draft of Red Hood, is what I kind of think of him as. Now, he can be a bit more extreme, but he might be, or maybe look at things a little bit differently. But Red Hood, if you don't know, is obviously Jason Todd, and his idea is, why are we capturing criminals and putting them in jail? We should just shoot them all in the head, and then the crime is finished.
Well, yeah, because his thing is that like the status quo isn't working. I'm going to change it permanently.
Exactly. And Anarky is very much before that, but maybe not along the exact same lines, but like the idea of like, let's do one big gesture. Why are we doing these small things? This is pointless. We're going through quicksand here. So the innovation in Anarky as a basic like storytelling concept is actually really hard to match. And by that I mean there's loads of characters that are like self-taught geniuses, which is what Anarky is, and teenage heroes, but most of them normally have like a mentor figure that they bring into the comic books.
They have a Batman or a Flash or something like. Yeah,
a character who's older that kind of looks after them. Grant confirms that like Anarky has basically nobody. He comes to his genius level intellect and his thoughts completely by himself as a child, and Grant has actually confirmed that at the time he was conceiving of the character of Lonnie Matchett, he had it in his head that the teenage anarchist would become a potential replacement for the recently deceased Jason Todd, who had recently just been killed in comic books.
Wow. That's quite interesting. And also, that's an interesting... Again, it kind of ends up happening with Red Hood, but that's an interesting person for Batman to play off of. Because Batman is a cop, pretty much.
It's a weird vibe. And also, you also have to take Marv Wolfman at the time, very famous comic book writer in the 80s and 90s, big into Teen Titans. He's a really talented human being. He was basically pushing hard for Tim Drake, and he had been kind of given the go-ahead to create Tim Drake as a third Robin, but Alan Grant kind of halfway through was like, well, here's another one if you want a different choice.
I'm just going to leave it here and not say anything.
Before we launch this, if you want to go a different direction, he's kind of here. Anarky was so popular, he had his ongoing series, as I mentioned, but over time the concept was picked up by other writers, and like there's immediate like rush of possibilities because of the concept of the character, but it gets diluted with every single person that comes in. So what the quote I found about it was that Anarky is one of the few characters with no real massive mistakes in regards to the character. It didn't make him do anything stupid. It was just like a slow disassembling of the core concept as the years went on and more writers came in and kind of took it slightly less or maybe in a different direction than maybe it was expected. Because at the start he's just pure anarchist.
Yeah. When you bring people in to write who have their own interpretation, like when you build a character around like a political or ideological belief, that's going to be different for everyone who writes for that character.
Yeah.
So it's it's never going to be the same.
Two really fascinating things about Anarky. One is he's kind of he's a foil for Tim Drake. They're very much opposite sides of two geniuses, but two child geniuses, but on two opposite sides of the spectrum. And secondly, is his outfit is basically V for Vendetta outfit.
I imagine
but it just has the A instead.
Pretty cool. Which is an upside down V with a line through it, let's be honest.
Exactly.
Does he have like the mask and everything?
He's got the mask, everything, right? So it gets even stranger. So Lonnie Matchett is an ordinary child who, while abnormally intelligent, is apolitical, socially unaware, as most 10-year-old, 11-year-olds are. At 11, he gained a foreign pen pal as part of a school program, and every month they would write to each other about their lives. Lonnie about how wonderful the United States was, and his pen pal about the poverty and the political repression that made up his nation. Now, it's not mentioned which nation, but it could be any of them.
Yes.
After a year of contact, his pen pal stops writing. Lonnie's letters are returned as undeliverable. A year later, Lonnie learns that he gets a final letter in, and his pen pal explains his father was arrested, his mother was taken ill, his sister died, and at age 11 he's homeless and fending for himself. Right?
Jesus.
So Lonnie's 11 now, and he's like, "Oh fuck, I gotta help."
Yeah, this is my friend.
This is my friend, and he fervently learns about the country that his friend is in, discovering it to be a third world dictatorship at war with Marxist guerrillas, with arms dealers from the West making millions in profits from the conflict, right? So at 11, he's basically like,
he's
dawned.
He figures out fucking the global industrial complex. Like
he figures out the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man kind of thing in a much simpler comic book way. I'm trying to break it down into comic book terms, but like, don't be selling guns to the lads, you know what I mean? Further studies into war and political violence lead him to become more and more radical, have more and more radical. He's 12, by the way, at this point.
Heavy for a 12-year-old.
He comes to view all wars as being caused by political elites, with common individuals forced into fighting on behalf of the former.
I mean, look, he's not. He's not.
Here's the thing. I think Sean's going to agree with he also began to read more into esoteric studies regarding science and philosophy, laying the groundwork for his advanced intelligence. He had he's a straight A student. He's just basically like, he just learns everything in 12 months. He just becomes obsessed with learning information and how the world works. Not just capital cities. He wants to know how those countries are run, who's in power, who's not in power, why are they in power, what happened.
That's really interesting. That it's like but it's also very personal, because it was just like, no, you hurt his friend, basically.
Yeah, and he uses that to learn about everything. Right? He becomes convinced that if he can't help his pen pal, he can fight on in his memory and give the oppressed people of Gotham City hope.
I mean, he sounds not like a bad guy so far.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, at the first initial take, but it's also a character you can do many things with, because he can be anything you want. He's completely flexible, because there's many stories when he turns up, he's a hero. And in many stories, he can be portrayed not as the villain. I would probably say the anti-villain. He probably, his goal is good, but how he wants to get there is like, you can't do that. That's fucked up.
Yeah. It's not like, I want to be in charge of Gotham.
No, he has no point. He never wants to take over Gotham.
Yeah.
He just wants the people who are corrupt. He's basically Riddler. Paul Dano's Riddler.
Yeah, pretty much.
Lonnie as Anarky then made his debut as an adversary to Batman. So he's still 12, but Anarky pops up and he's the size of a normal man, right? In which he responds to complaints in the newspaper so Batman responds to complaints in the newspaper by attacking the sources. Anarky does, such as the odour of a factory whose byproduct waste was polluting the water. So first thing he does, factory who's putting byproduct waste polluting water, immediately starts kicking the shit out of them. Like, that can't be done. Right? Anarky and Batman ultimately come to blows, and during their brief fight, Batman punches him in the stomach, he punches him in the gut, and it nearly kills him. Why? Anarky is only 12, but he has a fake head on top of his head to make himself look taller. Yeah,
so Batman punched him directly in the rib cage?
Basically in the rib cage, which he thinks is his stomach, because he has a mask, he's fully covered, so he just wants to look like a grown-up, so
which is clever,
people take him seriously.
But Batman nearly murdered a child.
He has no problems with that.
He's done that before.
He's like, where's your parents? I killed them too. But don't let his age deceive you. Grant basically created Anarky to be the voice of a voiceless generation, a child genius that holds radical anarchist philosophies. Through this character, basically Grant hoped to address things in mainstream superhero comics not often touched upon in any other comics.
I'm really primed for it in like 89 and the 90s. Like
he touches on anti-fascism, anti-militarism, anti-racism, police corruption, social inequality, and the disparity of wealth in America.
Conor, I think I like this dude.
But what I'm saying to you is, as the years went on, it
That
can
all-
very easily be... Look, we live in a world now, right, where people can have the right ideals, but the algorithm can take some of them. Like, for example, I don't like paedophiles, but if the algorithm can basically convince you that there's paedophiles in your area, you will turn on anybody if they convince you there's enough of them. That's
true.
Facebook's algorithm in a nutshell.
That is true. Also, paedophiles are bad. Let's all just agree on that.
Well, yeah, but like, you know what I mean.
I know.
Like, that's how they get a lot of people.
Anything can be targeted now.
It's a rabbit hole to find, and they figure out what you're clicking on to move on to the next thing. That's every fucking day. But in the 90s, none of that existed. So him just being like this was just him being like this. He didn't have anything else.
Yeah.
And so Anarky's goal upon the character's debut was the creation of a true welfare state and the total regulation of capitalist economy. In fact, many Anarky stories often amazingly make reference to anarchist philosophers and theorists. Like in a comic book, he even keeps a copy of the V for Vendetta in his room that you're able to see every time he goes there in his stories.
So Alan Grant was like researching all of this at the same time, presumably.
And as Alan Grant's views changed, his views might change as well slightly, Anarky's. But during the first confrontation, he's aided by a band of men who became loyal...
The Beatles?
I thought you were going to go with the Robin Hood Merry Band of Men. They basically became loyal to him because he was like, I'm going to get you out of here. Batman, of course, wins, sends him to a juvenile detention centre. His follow-up story is in 1990 in a story called Rite of Passage, and this is again by Alan Grant. And in Rite of Passage, during his detention, he increases his computer skills in jail to the point of becoming an advanced computer hacker. He takes on the online user alias Money Spider, which would be his name a lot of times whenever he does any sort of work laundering money online. And he steals tens of millions of dollars from Western corporations, including Wayne Enterprises, outmaneuvering Batman's own data security in the process.
That's insane. That's a really cool character thing. So even when he's locked up, he's getting better.
He then uses the money to create bank accounts for poor farmers in third world countries.
What a fucking legend, man.
That's the thing. So, like, he's brought as a character that can be both... He's a villain towards Batman, not because he stole his money, but in general.
Yeah, but not even, like...
Because like, Batman is the cops, as you said.
He's Robin Hood. He's stealing from SpaceX and giving it to people in need.
Yeah. So, Tim Drake, who's not yet Robin in this, proudly foils an Anarky scheme. But Anarky's plotline here is mostly overshadowed. This is the same story where Tim's parents are kidnapped. This is like the big Tim coming out party. Yeah. And Tim's mother dies and his father gets basically paralysed. So it kind of overshadows the whole Anarky thing. But there's also a cool part in the story where Anarky's in jail, like preaching to his fellow prisoners in juvie, basically convincing them that he's right, and he's like becoming a cult leader.
What the fuck? So he's doing the Riddler thing, the Paul Dano Riddler thing.
Kind of, yeah. It also cements him as a champion of the poor, something introduced in the previous arc. So through Grant's words, or Anarky's monologues, mainstream superhero comics were finally on the verge of having a hero or anti-hero that shared the values of like underprivileged, marginalised groups that he's like in comic books saying all this stuff that they've been saying for years.
That's sick, man. That's so cool.
Yeah, and like say rich man Bruce Wayne, he might fight for the people who are underprivileged, but he's never actually been one.
Yeah,
whereas Anarky has been one.
Yeah, he doesn't have that experience of what it's like to grow up like that.
So look, this is where it gets slightly. I'm going to read the next bit. And then you can tell me how you feel, because he's still kind of good, but also, well, it kind of reminds me of somebody else. His plans for global change were thwarted when the money laundering thing doesn't work out. Realising he needs greater funds to continue his mission, he creates a front corporation called Anarky to sell anarchist books online. Through shrewd marketing, he amasses a small fortune to the tune of $5 million. And with his new funds and a knowledge of groundbreaking sciences, he builds a special device of his own creation. The device is a machine that fuses the two sides of his brain together, increasing his intelligence to superhuman levels.
That's less cool than if he just learns things.
It also communicated with him and helped him control most of his tech via voice communication. His intelligence is boosted by a multiple of 10. He then studies various martial arts, integrating them into his fighting style, and he becomes like a killer fighter.
I don't know. He should just be a weedy little dude.
Because it's more interesting that way. But entering the mid-90s, his next appearance would be in the classic Nightfall arc, in which he also has like interactions with Scarecrow and the crazy new Batman, Jean-Paul Valley. So he has interactions with them. So they're kind of like introducing him slowly at this point. He also is brought in...
Why didn't he just steal more money? Because... Why did he have to resort to capitalism in order to make $5 million?
See, that's the thing. And as it goes on, he resorts less into the steal from the rich, give to the poor idea.
Yeah.
It's very weird. But actually, there's a story called Shadow of the Bat, which actually kind of pushes him into the status of possible hero, in which he teams up with Batman and Robin and a private eye called Joe Potato, which I think is fantastic.
Jesus Christ.
He earns the respect of the heroes by basically like selflessly driving a machine into the Gotham Harbour at great risk to his own life. And they even think that he's perished and they mourn his loss. And it kind of showed limitless potential for the character at that point. So he's done some bad stuff, he's done some good stuff. He's kind of just like, you can do anything. He's Mala.
You can put him into... Do you want to explain what Mala is to people?
Play-Doh,
plasticine, yeah.
Play-Doh I think works for everyone.
That's cool how you can just have him drop into a situation. And like, he is anarchy. Like, he doesn't... He's not on one side. He's just on his...
But if what Batman is going for is similar to what he wants, he'll help. He doesn't care.
But if Batman is like, I'm gonna like, Batman has... He's really focused on the weird costumed heroes, you know, or villains.
he's too busy punching Joker to really solve the problems. With the popularity spiking though, Shaun, he's appeared in all these comic books. DC gave the green light for a coveted solo miniseries in the 90s, and this is a character you probably never even heard of, and he had his own miniseries.
Is he in Batman Origins?
He is in Batman Arkham Origins, yes. Grant was brought in once again, joined forces, and they created a 4-issue series first of all in 97. Now, sadly, his unique status as a leftist social justice vigilante drastically changed in this series. Lonnie's belief system altered to kind of more of like a radicalism. He went from that to kind of like... They say lots of weird phrases in this regard, but he kind of goes away from where he was, is what I'm going to say.
Right.
He invents a device that will de-brainwash every human on Earth of all individual social constraints, hoping to eliminate religious fundamentalism.
Oh, no. He's doing a wake-up sheeple.
He's doing a wake-up sheeple. This may seem like Anarchy's prior modus operandi, but the big difference is now he wants to upload the capitalist free market system, or uphold, the free market system in America. So he was like all about destroying everything, and now he's like, no, markets are good. We just need to sheeple. You need to get rid of them.
This is awful. This is the worst.
I knew there was going to be a spot when you changed.
Because he's not cool. He's just worse Red Hood.
Yeah,
I know Red Hood wasn't a thing, but
he's much less interesting. He's way more interesting when he first starts as just a scrawny guy who's incredibly clever.
And it's all off his own back. Like,
yeah.
They massacred my boy.
To my boy. In 1999, that was in 4 issues, and then in 1999 they delivered the second volume of our Anarky, 8 issues that see Batman kicking Anarky out of Gotham. Lonnie moves to Washington DC, where he builds his own Anarky cave underneath the Washington Monument. He becomes an expert in super string theory, gets Green Lantern ring at one stage during this. He starts blogging. He fights Ra's al Ghul.
Sorry, the fucking list of builds a cave, gets a Green Lantern ring, starts blogging, fights Ra's al Ghul.
He fights zombie resurrected founding fathers of America.
What the fuck are they doing?
I could be all day covering those 8 issues. I had to literally list them out because he does so much shit. However, with sales lagging in the comic book, DC gave Anarky Volume 2 the axe. Hoping to go out with a bang, they decided once again to elevate their beloved character to the pinnacle of DC's mythos, basically by heavily insinuating that Joker was Anarky's biological dad in the final issue. They
really ruined something good, didn't they?
So they very much say at the end, they were like, he was put up for adoption, and they're just his parents that his parents that he thinks are his parents. They're not his real parents, and it's actually could be Joker, you know what I mean?
It's better if it's Riddler.
Yeah, it is, probably. It's better if it's nobody.
It's better if he's just a self-made man.
Yeah, but just as Grant and Breyfogle had once unsuccessfully lobbied to make Lonnie the third Robin, their idea to partially link Joker with Lonnie never really got going either. They desperately wanted this to be canon, but the higher-ups in DC, they were kind of very much against it. They were like, no. At the moment, not really. So there was no follow-up confirmation, never happened, there was no true or false, and effectively cut off the Joker-related momentum at its knees. So we'll never know if Joker was Lonnie's dad in the modern age. He would leave DC. Alan Grant would leave DC shortly afterwards, basically placing Anarky in the dreaded character limbo for a decade. He came back, I think,
when they need him.
I think he came back during Batman R.I.P. When Tim Drake was Red Hood. I think he appears in those issues for a little while, and then in the new 52. But the 90s, he was red hot in 91, 92, 93, and they had enough momentum that they could have actually had their own issue series. But as I said, as the years went on, it's a very heavy character. And the problem is, the more you introduce him, the more watered down he becomes, I think.
And also, just the more it's because I think if you were to introduce a character called Anarky now, there's enough, like what you're saying there, there's enough echo chambers, but there's also enough just fucking contrarianism online where it would be very easy to just make him how do I say this? A free thinker.
How do we say he would have stormed the Capitol on January 6th without saying he would have stormed the Capitol?
Yeah. If they were to do it now, he would be more of a far right kind of dude.
It's really interesting that even listening to this and even reading these issues, I was like, it's so mad how the world has completely changed.
Yeah,
even from the 90s.
Because Anarky used to just be no system, left or right, just nothing.
Now look, we don't normally get into any of that. That's why I didn't really want to cover this character for a long time. But it's a fascinating study into how this character comes, and immediately I knew you'd be on board because you'd be like, oh, that's a really interesting, cool idea.
Yeah, it's and I like the fact that he's a kid at the start.
Yeah. But then he builds a machine to make himself a super genius, learns every fighting skill, and then starts thinking maybe actually I might steal other people's money. I think where he loses me is when he takes all those people's money by selling stuff to build a machine to make himself smarter. I think that's kind of that's not great.
He essentially makes Amazon. is what he does.
Yeah, he that's when the character, he might not be completely ruined at that point, but he starts going off the rails. He kind of gets away from what kind of makes him super interesting to begin with.
I would love if he was just stuck to his guns and he was just like, no, these people don't need the money, these people need the money.
But you also have to factor in that Red Hood then shows up, and him and Red Hood occupy the same space, but one is Jason Todd.
True, but one of them is, if you don't give Anarky the fighting and the martial arts and everything, then one of them, Red Hood is like the brawler on the streets, and then Anarky is like the tech genius doing it all from his bedroom. And then they team up, and then they're unstoppable.
They would be, is the thing. So, like, their abilities, he has genius level intellect, computer operation, computer hacking. He's a genius computer hacker. He just memorises every single thing he ever sees and reads. Martial arts, now with the augmentations, he's got every single martial arts style. He's like Taskmaster, because he just learns them all. His brain is operating at like 100%.
Yeah, he's got the limitless pill at all times.
Yeah. So, like, it's one of those where, depending on who's writing him, it's a character that hasn't been touched, really, for years. Like, he's been brought back every so often, but, like, when I say the character Anarky, I don't think a lot of people know of him, which is really fascinating for somebody who, like, in 92, 93, he could have been Robin.
Yeah, he was, like, on the draft list for being Robin, and he didn't get picked.
And you could see why, because, I mean, like, he has everything locked up. He's 12, he's a genius. You can see actually where they went from Tim Drake and him. They're, like, basically the same human, but, like, they just take arrows in different directions.
Yeah, and I think what probably did it as well is that Jason Todd was, like, the kid living on the streets doing crime to survive kind of a deal. So they had already kind of touched on that a little bit. So it was easier if Tim was just a good boy who figured it out.
Also, I think he should be used more just for the design. I think the design is fucking great.
I'm going to look up a picture of him, because
I would recommend looking up the picture. I think it's just a really... It's very Viva Vendetta, but the Viva Vendetta design is really fucking good. So why would you not want to look that up? Or like, why would you not want to look like that? Yeah, doesn't he look really good? It's just red instead of like... It's so good.
There's one here and he's just in a hoodie. That's not as good, but...
No, he needs the mask.
He needs the mask and he needs the robes, because that's fucking savage.
Yeah. And he, like, sprays the A everywhere.
Hell yeah, he does.
Yeah, so that is my report on Anarky, Shaun. A character that I don't think you probably knew a lot about, and I hope people liked it.
Yeah, my own experience had been Arkham Origins, and he's fine in that. But it's cool to see where he started, and it's kind of rough to see how far he fell. But true. A good report, Connor. Would you like me to take us out?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of Hero or Zero. We will be back on Monday with an episode of the Heroes for Hire podcast, and next week with another episode of Hero or Zero. Big thank you to everyone over on Patreon, patreon.com/Heroes for Hire podcast. Over there helps us to keep the show going, and we really, really appreciate all of you. There is also a merch store, heroesforhire.ie/shop. Twitter is at Heroes for Hire Pod, the 4 is the number 4. Facebook is Detective Divilment's discussion group. Instagram is Heroes for Hire podcast, and the best way to ever help out the show is to tell one human being that we exist.
Just a one, please.
And I think that's about it, Connor.
I think so. So I've been Conor Lorraine.
I've been Shaun Meehan.
We shall see you all next week, guys.
Bye.
Bye.